Hi, I'm John. In this video, I'm making some more of these little outdoor tables. They're great for on your deck or around your fire pit, and they break down for storage over the winter months. To make the tops, I'm going to use my new circle cutting router guide. If you need a guide for your router to cut larger circles, I hope you'll check out my video on making this one. Super simple to put together. I have free plans with all the dimensions that I use for both of these on my website at warrentonwoodworks.com, and I hope you'll stick around for the video. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the tops. The tabletop is made up of 1 3/4 inch wide boards that I'm ripping from an 8-foot long cedar 1x6. The tabletop boards have an 1/8 inch gap between them. Originally I used popsicle sticks to create this, but I'm ripping some 1/8 inch strips for the next couple of tables. To minimize the waste, I'm cutting the tabletop slats as close as possible to their final circular dimensions. You're going to need 2 of each dimension for one tabletop. After rough cutting the tabletop slats and spacers to length, I marked the center lines on all the boards to make aligning them easier and moved on to gluing up the apron. I let the apron dry and pre-drilled the holes and screwed it into the tabletop. I'm not using glue at this point, so I can take the slats apart to individually route and sand them after cutting the circle. I'm going to use double-sided tape to hold the tabletop to my workbench while I route out the circle. I'm using double-sided tape to secure the little square scrap with a 1/4 inch hole in it for my router jig. I took a block plane and I just planed off the edges around this little piece so that it's not going to get hung up on the tabletop. So I want the router bit just to touch this outside edge here, and the same thing on the other side. So now that the tabletops are all finished up, just a couple quick notes before I move on to the legs. First, I wouldn't use popsicle sticks as spacers and to protect the edges when you're routing. First of all, you have to use a ton of them. And secondly, when I was using them on the first one, the router was grabbing them and shooting them across the garage. So I pass on these. What worked a lot better was I cut some 1/8 inch strips of cedar, just some scrap, and I put those in between the slats while I was just for spacing, and while I was cutting them with the router, that worked a lot better. Definitely the way to go. So I tried a couple different ways of assembling these, and I found the thing that worked the best for me was to lay out the slats and with the spacers in, put some pressure on either side, and then lay out the apron. Once I got the apron the way I wanted it, I glued it together and screwed it down to the top. Then I was able to cut the circle, and then finally take off the apron, put some glue on, and put it back down. This allows you to sand these slats individually, and it makes things a lot easier. Now I'm going to get started with the legs. I ripped 1 1/4 inch strips from an 8-foot cedar 1x4 and cut them 23 9/16 inches long. I used a 57-degree angle, making the top of the table 20.5 inches high. So for the legs, I'm just using a couple pieces of cedar, and I'm going to cut rebates in both of the legs so that I can join them together and they'll be in the same plane, like this. I'll attach the legs with these barrel fasteners, and I'll also attach a small piece of cedar at the bottom for lateral support, and I'm also using the same barrel fasteners, and these will also be rebated into the legs. I wanted the widest possible footprint for the legs so that it would have a more stable base. So I put them on the second to the last slat. I also bumped them out a little bit from the apron with a couple little spacers that are just little cedar blocks. And those were cut from the same material that I cut the legs from. I marked one of the legs, and I'm using it to transfer the rebate positions to the rest of the legs. I'm using blue painter's tape to hold them together while I cut them. So to figure out the length for the bottom support that goes in the rebate on the legs, I'm just going to use the legs themselves. I've clamped up where they're actually going to go with the little spacers in place, and then I'll just take that line and then cut that on the miter saw. Now that I have the cross braces cut to length, I need to cut the corresponding rebate in the legs. I marked one of the legs and added some tape so they wouldn't move around while I was cutting them. So since I'm building a couple of these, and basically everything I do is not exact, I find it really useful to mark all the parts. So I have these marked, and they go with these end ones. This isn't as important, but anything where holes are going to have to line up, for instance, these, it's really useful to have those marked so that they can go back exactly the same way they were when you originally drilled the holes. I'm going to go ahead and glue up the legs to these little extender pieces that go between the leg and the apron, essentially extending the legs out so that they have a little bit more lateral stability. Well, that wraps up this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you found something useful. I hope you stay tuned for the finishing video where I'll be spraying something on these to protect them from Mother Nature. Don't forget to check out my circle cutting guide video, and I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. See you in the next video.